This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dorrinal, Brian Niemeier, and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. That's right, it's another shiny Saturday afternoon here in the big desert state wherein I reside. A state that if you go out to some of the more desolate spots resembles that which we are here to discuss today. But before we get to the subject at hand, we're going to allow our co-hosts to get a word in edgewise while I dash like a madman across the room and grab some water. Fortunately for me, I don't have to guzzle it down out of a semi-trailer. So you guys talk and keep the audience entertained until I get back, okay?
Hello, thank you for the great introduction, as usual. It's good to be back on the Gab. Brian, how are you doing?
Great, I am ecstatic to be back. And I mean, come on, let's be honest, we all know he's going for the breast milk trough.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got it, you gotta drink it.
So creamy. Hope they pasteurize it.
Yeah, I mean, but those resources, you have to wonder what they can and can't do with the milk there. Oh.
Yeah, no, I'm fine not wondering about that. But,
yeah.
Did you see the Amazon reviews for the Wilton's Color Mist Silver Spray I put in the chat here?
No, I didn't see that.
I mean, Daddy Warpig were cracking up over that a minute ago before you joined us.
They are hilarious. They are.
Yeah, for the benefit of our audience, this company named Wilton makes cake and pastry accessories, and they have this silver mist that can apparently you can spray it on cakes and such, and give it an almost chrome machine, if you will, make it shiny in chrome. And as patrons of Amazon are wont to do, God bless them, a few thousand folks descended on the Wilton's Amazon page and left reviews in character as if they were war boys.
Wow, I love it. I'm going to have to check out that link later.
Yeah, I wish I could post it in our live chat, but alas, they don't allow URLs.
They don't allow a lot of things. Google's kind of a tight ass when it comes to their chat. It's annoying. It's obnoxious.
Yeah.
I miss IRC.
Yeah.
I was considering doing this through Skype for a bit until I actually got the problems fixed last week, which is fine because if I was going to do it through Skype, I'd have to work at it and learn a whole new system and stuff, and frankly, I don't have the ambition to do that.
There you
go. We have before we get into the review or the discussion, I wanted to give Brian, who has been part of Geek Gab for a long time now, is a published author, an indie published author. He has published his first book and is on the verge of doing revisions for his second book, and I want to give him a chance to pimp his work out here, to shill. That's it. I want to give him a chance to shillingly shill his work in the most shill-tastic manner he is capable of shilling, and I'll put a link to his science fiction novel in the discussion notes so that you guys can check it out. I bought it. You should too. Go, Brian.
Thank you, Daddy Warpig, and thanks for buying my book. You know, it's not every day that you get permission from Daddy Warpig to shill. So I'm going to take full advantage of that and say, yes, the book is called Ethereal. I just finally got an accurate description of exactly what it is, because I always followed a friend of the show, Larry Correa's advice, to just write what you want and leave what genre to categorize the book in up to the marketing guys. But as an indie author, I am the marketing guy, so I need to know lovely keywords for Amazon and how to describe it to people. And she said that it is stream of consciousness SF in the tradition of Roger Zelazny. That apparently is the closest to analog to my work, which is odd because I haven't gotten around to reading him yet.
I want to brag for a second. You know how awesome I am?
I only have inklings of it, but go ahead and enlighten me.
I already have a link to your book in the liner notes.
Yes!
Already there. I thought of it last week before we did our show, and I just stuck it in there and forgot about it.
Well, thank you. Okay, back to showing. Everyone click on that now.
We'll wait.
It's now labeled Brian's book down on the bottom. It's an Amazon link. No affiliate code or anything. It's just an Amazon link to go out and check out his book. A stream of consciousness science fiction novel in the classic style of Roger Zelazny, author of Lord of Light and other classic science fiction novels. Well worth your time, I promise you.
Thank you. According to LGG Lamplighter, my editor, the Zelazny book it most resembles is Creatures of Light and Darkness.
I have read some Zelazny, but I have not read that one.
Yeah, I'm going to get my hands on it here. But, yeah, and by stream of consciousness, I want to just reiterate that it's not in the style of like Faulkner, but what she was getting at is, you know how you've got the more Sandersonian, if you will, fantasy, where you can see the nuts and bolts of the magic system, and it functions pretty much like a technology. So, you know, it's magic treated as pretty much a technique or just another technology. Me and Zelazny are apparently the reverse of that, where you've got supernatural beings and gods rubbing elbows with space pirates, and there are spaceships flying around, and it's just considered normal, and no one really bats an eyelid at it.
What the Primal Order used to refer as I can't remember the term now. It's a high intervention plane. It's a plane where gods are allowed to walk around free and do whatever the heck they want. There's no nothing preventing them from materializing in the world.
You nailed it. I gotta write that down. High intervention plane. Thanks.
Yeah, versus a low intervention plane where you're allowed to send clerics about and a couple of low-level godlings and maybe appear as an avatar once in a rare while, in a no intervention plane where you're only allowed to power up clerics. The Primal Order is just one of the best RPG supplements ever made.
Yeah, speaking of which, when's the Ethereal RPG supplement coming out?
And what system are you using?
I made my own.
Did you really?
Yeah, you guys thought you could get me? I'm calling your bluff. Yeah, I have an RPG for the system that I've been playtesting.
Is it the same one we were discussing on the show earlier that you and your friends had kind of thrown together from everything under the sun?
No, that was my first one that I made with a buddy. This one is all me. It's percentile based, along with a D4 that I call the Nexus die. And the way that you can get like a super critical is if all three numbers match.
Ooh,
So
that's
like
interesting.
1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. Yeah. And I got the idea from 333 is in some Jesus circles called God's phone number.
That's a 1 in 400 chance. No, that's
God's phone number. I love it. Hey,
1 in
so
40 chance.
let's get all together on Skype next week, and we'll have a game. We'll play on Roll20 or something.
We can play in Roll20 in this Hangout. There's a Roll20 Hangout thing. We could broadcast it as a special episode of Geek Gab.
If you guys are down, I'm down. Just let me know.
Okay, so and I'm going to stop and let. So check out the link. Buy the book. It's a great book. It's interesting. And then we're going to let. Is there anything, Dorrinal, you wanted to mention before we jump into the subject of today's show?
Oh, you put me on the spot. No, just been doing the usual, loving the geek stuff, living the life. Playing lots of, been playing lots of stuff lately, but nothing new.
Okay, and I have, as always, been plodding along on my projects and antagonizing people on Twitter. Although that is going to come to an abrupt end. I should mention, this is my turn to sort of pseudo-shill. I have been accepted by a publisher to write a book, a memoir of the last year of my life in Gamergate and Sad Puppies and the Hugos and all of that. So when I get it together, if it's a publishable manuscript, which I have no doubt, but that it will be, they're going to publish it, and it will be awesome. And eligible, I should note, if we can get it published before the end of this year, it will be eligible for a Hugo nomination under Best Related Work next year. So I am aiming to get it published before the end of the year and aiming to get it nominated for a Hugo next year, just so I can call myself a Hugo-nominated author for the rest of my life. And it will also antagonize people on Twitter. Now, don't be misled. I don't do everything in my life to antagonize people on Twitter, but if it also happens to antagonize certain people on Twitter, I do not turn away from the activity. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. I will be putting it together as quickly as I can while also maintaining a high level of quality. I like what I've done so far, and I will keep you guys apprised of the progress. And when the official contract gets signed and there's enough of the book written that the publisher is willing to go public about it, I will also let you know who's publishing it and maybe even a date. Any questions from the audience? Or is somebody monitoring the chat?
I am.
Yeah, we've got some people hanging out, but no questions or anything yet.
Okay. Today's show, which you will have noticed if you saw the title, episode 23 of Geek Gab, is about Mad Max Fury Road. And before we went on the air, Brian requested the singular honor of being able to give the plot summation before we dive into the show. So take it away, Brian.
The film takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where a string of wars, sometimes nuclear, over water and oil have left the planet a devastated wasteland. In the old world, Max Arkatansky was a cop in pursuit of justice. In the new world, his goals have been reduced to mere survival. The opening act finds Max captured by the scavenger army of Colonel Joseph Moore, a.k.a. Immortan Joe. Leader of a fanatical personality cult ruled through his monopoly on water, food, gasoline, and ammo. Meanwhile, we meet Furiosa, an imperator in Joe's private army. She's about to set off in command of a trade expedition assigned to exchange a tanker full of water for fuel and bullets. In reality, Furiosa plans to betray Joe by smuggling his 5 favorite wives to freedom in a vaguely described green place somewhere to the east of Joe's citadel. When the Immortan discovers the ruse, he must resolve his forces to chase down Furiosa's war rig and recapture his fleeing brides. Max is pressed into service as the human blood bag for Nux, one of Immortan Joe's cancer-riddled war boys. Following a series of high-speed action set pieces, Max and Nux join the women's escape attempt as Joe calls in reinforcements from Gastown and the Bullet Farm. After passing through many more trials and tragedies, Max comes up with a daring plan to turn the tables on the warlords and give his new friends a chance at some kind of redemption.
We should have announced spoilers, but, you know. What the heck.
I mean, I love the Geek Gab and all, but when we talk about a movie that's as good as Mad Max Fury Road, you should be watching that instead. If you haven't yet, come back and watch the YouTube vid.
Okay, so first opinions. Dorrinal, you really love this movie, obviously. Justify your love of this movie. You're on the spot.
Oh, wow. So, if you guys have been listening to the Gab, you know that I was completely blown away by the trailer. My wife and I were at the movies and we saw this thing, and I'd never seen a Mad Max movie, but this trailer promised everything. You know, crazy action, wacky characters, post-apocalyptic future, and violence, right? It delivered. It absolutely delivered in the way that the trailer promised, and what I mean is that despite being an apocalyptic wasteland, the characters were bright and colorful, fun to watch. The the movie was a 2-hour-long chase scene that almost never let up, with um, with practical effects. We saw cars rigged up piecemeal with armor and weapons and everything, and actually flipping and blowing up and everything. It's wonderful. Everything you wanted out of this movie, you got.
Okay, Brian.
Yeah, what he said.
What he said.
Nailed it.
I already got to talk. I think it's Daddy Warpig's turn.
I already described things. I don't have to have an opinion. It wasn't my job to have an opinion. When did this happen?
So now,
is that your that's your approach to the situation? Is that it? No. Here's my opinion. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
It is probably going to be a controversial opinion to a lot of people, but I will start off by saying this. This is not actually a Mad Max movie. I'm not talking about how much he was or wasn't in it. Set that aside. It's not actually a Mad Max movie. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying this makes it a bad movie. It's obviously a far, far better movie than the third one, which is Thunderdome, which has, that's not a terrible movie. It's a mediocre movie. I have seen far worse movies, and I've seen YouTube videos made of even worse movies than that. So I'm not trying to drag Thunderdome through the dirt, and I'm not trying to tear down Fury Road. But Fury Road is not a Mad Max movie. And in the way that Mad Max was shot on a vanishingly small budget and was entirely done in practical effects, and in fact, Roger Ebert said of the first Mad Max movie that he could not believe that no stuntmen were killed during the first movie. It was that visceral, it was that brutal, it was that gripping. The chase scenes and the car wrecks and all the action of the movie was so amazing and so gripping and so down and dirty, low tech that he was amazed that no one had been killed. That's the feeling of the first two Mad Max movies. Mad Max and then what Americans call the Road Warrior. The third one, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, was a lazily put together, slick, high-budget Hollywood production that was a Mad Max movie but was too pretty, too polished to really get back into that dirt and grit, that 70s feel, low-budget 70s feel that the first two movies had. This movie, on the other hand, is a comic book. And again, that's not meant to be an insult. I like comic books. I just read several comic books over the last few days catching up with some X-Men stuff. It is far more fantastic in the sense of being unrealistic. If the first few Mad Max movies were like Netflix's Daredevil, think of it that way. One guy in an improvised suit beating the heck out of thugs on the streets. If the first two Mad Max movies were like Netflix's Daredevil, then this Mad Max movie, Fury Road, is like the Avengers, or the Avengers Age of Ultron, which is a lot of computer animation, very, very big budget, characters who are doing superhuman things, and a lot more color, a lot stronger color palette that was enabled by computer post-processing, image post-processing, things like that. I'm not saying this to put the movie down, because this is going to sound like I'm saying, well, it's not a real Mad Max movie, and I don't like it because it's not a real Mad Max movie, and anyone who likes real Mad Max movies won't like this movie. That's not what I'm saying. You get a lot of that on the internet. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can think of it as a completely different genre. It is a comic book movie. It is not a brutal, low-down, gritty, crime-ridden, post-apocalyptic action movie. So that's my core thought on Fury Road is, for all its strengths, and there's a lot about it that is entertaining, and there's a lot about it that is frankly bizarre. But for all its strengths, you don't go into it thinking that this will be exactly like every other Mad Max movie, because it isn't.
Well, the only thing I can say in response to that is that I've never seen the other Mad Max movies. I came
Sure.
in with no preconceptions, and I got what I wanted out of this movie, which was what it is. I think one of the best things about it is, I mean, how do you make an action movie good? How do you make it feel real? Is by evoking a world that it lives in. This does the same thing that John Wick does, where it evokes this fantastic world where everything's gone to hell, and so you understand everybody's behaving oddly, but you sort of understand why they're doing what they're doing and what they're doing, and that being the context of all the crazy action, makes things like the guitarist, part of the War Party, one of the best characters. It's not really a character, right? Everybody's favorite guy shredding on a guitar that's also a flamethrower. Come on, right? That makes sense in this world. It's just mind blowing.
It's more Warhammer 40K than it is a realistic movie.
Well, and you had an interesting point, Eddie Warpig, in that Mad Max, even though he's the title character, he's not the main protagonist.
That's true for the other movies, right? I did read that this isn't that atypical for a Mad Max movie.
No, that,
I don't think that a lot of people have been trying to attack the movie by saying it's not a Mad Max movie. I'm not doing that, because you have to take this movie for what it is, for what they intended to make. They didn't intend to make something exactly like the other Mad Max movies. And so saying, oh yeah, it is like the other Mad Max movies, oh no, it's not. Mad Max was the protagonist, clearly the protagonist in the first movie, Mad Max itself. He was the person that all the action revolved around. He was the person who it was very much about. And the very first Mad Max wasn't quite post-apocalyptic. It was almost post-apocalyptic to where society was breaking down, but it was still clinging on, and it was more of a cop revenge thriller. If you think of Lethal Weapon 2, where Mel Gibson's character in Lethal Weapon 2 gets a girlfriend, she gets hurt, and some of the fellow policemen gets hurt, and he goes off to get revenge. That's what the first Mad Max movie is. People he loves get hurt, he goes off to get revenge against the people who killed him. That's Mad Max. And its unique thing was taking place on roads where people were fighting each other from cars. The Road Warrior was clearly fully post-apocalyptic. Everything had broken down, and he was the protagonist, but it was more of a Western, and all post-apocalyptic movies are Westerns. I've said that before, and we can discuss that at some other point if you want to. It's a Western where you have a town of workers and farmers who are under assault by savages from the wasteland, and the lone wandering gunman comes into town and helps the decent people defend themselves against the barbarians, and lots of the decent people also armor up, and many of them die. So it's a Western. It's a post-apocalyptic Western. It's a low-tech Western. It's a Western that happens on the back of cars, and the last third of the movie or half of the movie is this long car chase, but it's still a Western. And he is the protagonist of the movie. He's the center of the movie, like Clint Eastwood in a lot of his famous movies, or any other Western protagonist for that matter. But there are a lot of other characters who get more lines because they're always gabbing around this lone wanderer.
I'm going to insert something really quick at this point.
Go ahead.
I want to make sure we're on the same page in terms of the definition of protagonist, because when I said it in my comment, I had a very specific technical definition of it, which is that the protagonist is the primary character who wants something in a story, and whose pursuit of that goal, despite opposition, for clearly defined stakes, is what drives the plot.
Yeah, Mad Max was not driving the plot in this movie.
No, he's the relationship character. You're correct.
Yeah. Furiosa is driving the plot.
Yes, she is a protagonist. And spoiler alert, I suppose, is that one way you can tell is that in Fury Road, the relationship character never directly interacts with the main antagonist.
She kicks it off. Her decisions are the inciting event that starts the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's her goal that they're driving towards. Max doesn't really have a goal of his own. He's just kind of there and gets dragged along with it.
Right, he just wants to survive. I mean, he states at the beginning that's all he's in for.
So what's the technical term for what Mad Max is? So Mad Max is the character through which the audience experiences the story. So he fills the protagonist's role in that sense. So is there a technical term for that kind of character?
Well, I'd advise you guys to check out, I forget which Writing Excuses episode it is, but where Lou Anders, the chief editor at Prometheus Books, or Pyre, I believe, lays out like this film theory that in every film you've got three main characters. You've got the protagonist, the antagonist, and the relationship character. And the protagonist is the character who wants something and whose pursuit of that thing drives the plot. The antagonist is the character who's not necessarily villainous, but who just puts obstacles in the way of the protagonist reaching the goal. I mean, it could just be as simple as like two guys who are romantic rivals for the same woman's affection in a romance, even if one of them isn't evil. But the relationship character has a very special role in that usually he acts as a secondary foil for the protagonist. There will usually be a reconciliation theme where the relationship character and the protagonist kind of reconcile, or their relationship is cemented. And usually you can identify the relationship character by he's the one who will at some point explicitly state the movie's theme, which Max definitely does in Fury Road.
Well, and here's the thing too. Think about it this way: at the very end of the movie, or near the end of the movie, Max makes a decision to come back and help these guys make it to their goal. You could have finished the movie and had a perfectly fine whole movie if he had made a different decision and wandered off into the wasteland on the motorcycle. The movie could have ended pretty close to the same as it did. He isn't, because what was driving the plot was Furiosa's goal to save these 5 women. If Max had left at that point, his involvement in the movie was incidental at that point. It's nice that he was there, but he could have wandered off and it wouldn't have changed much at all.
And Dorrinal hit on an interesting point. It's actually often not the protagonist who is the audience's entry point into the movie. It's like sometimes if the protagonist is, especially if he's like this larger-than-life figure, it can be the relationship character who's actually the one we identify with, like Sam Gamgee in Lord of the Rings as opposed to Aragorn, for example.
Well, and if you're in certain superhero movies, the one the audience identifies with is the normal person who is being dragged along, not necessarily the superhero.
Right. So, the character you identify with can be the protagonist, but they're not always synonymous.
Okay, we've got about 2 minutes left. Dorrinal, do you have anything to say to wrap up?
I'm good. Oh, one thing I did remember that I just finally enjoyed the joys of, and I'm going to go completely off to a new thing here, is I just totally enjoyed Sharknado for the first time last night.
Okay. Brian, any last words?
We were going to talk about Skin Game originally, weren't we?
I guessed, looking at the show length, that we weren't going to get to Skin Game this week. That's why I didn't mention it, and why I didn't actually put anything about it in the notes, if you'll notice. It's not mentioned at all.
Sorry.
It's okay. I knew that we weren't going to get it to it, so.
Something for the audience to look forward to next time.
yeah, we will try to get Skin Game scheduled for a future show. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. We are out of time for today. Dorrinal giving Fury Road a heavy recommendation. Brian giving Fury Road a heavy recommendation. Me giving Fury Road a recommendation. See it. It's a lot of fun. It's a great action movie, and it is better than most action movies that came out this year. Just if you're a fan of the Mad Max movies, if you love the Mad Max movies, accept that this is not like the other two Mad Max movies. Accept it for its own thing and enjoy it anyway. This is Geek Gab, a weekly podcast, occasionally live. We appreciate everyone for tuning in, and Brian, Dorrinal, and myself, we will be back.